Washington Journal continues.
This is Representative Dan Meuser, Republican of Pennsylvania, a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman Meuser, thanks for giving us your time today.
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Where are you on this reported deal on banning Russian imports?
Well, the idea that we spend $2 billion a month and we send to Putin's government, to Putin himself, on oil that we could be creating and drilling for here in the United States is upside down and backwards logic and policy. Makes absolutely no sense. Under President Trump, a short 14 months ago, we were energy independent on our way to becoming energy dominant, as we should be with the reserves that we have. We are also the cleanest driller and developer of such energy. So the idea that we are buying 8%, 7.5%, $2 billion a month from Putin, a tyrant, creating all kinds of abuses and atrocities in the Ukraine in a completely outrageous invasion, is foolish, and it needs to stop. And I think it will. President Zelensky asked for that on a recent call, among other things, and we should certainly appreciate the fact that being energy independent is a national security issue. The Biden administration has no understanding of this and refuses to accept this fact. So we've lost leverage. Now, on the same note, Europe is receiving 40% of its energy from Russia. They put themselves in a terrible position, and they won't be able to wean off as quickly as we could. We need to do it now. We need to stop purchasing oil from Russia. I will tell you this, the private sector has already stepped up. Exxon, Shell, other U.S. oil companies have stopped purchasing Russian oil since the invasion took place.
As far as if this legislation goes through and these bans go into effect, already a concern about gas prices. You may have heard some of the calls from the previous segment. What would be your message then to not only those you represent, but the public as large?
Well, you know what? Call the Biden White House and tell them to start drilling domestically, because it's an outrage. The gasoline prices were at $3.75 before the invasion took place. Now, of course, they're spiking to $4.17, the highest ever, higher than Jimmy Carter. Congratulations, President Biden. So we're in dire straits because of this. The American people are dealing with this sort of inflation. You know, oil prices going up affect manufacturers of plastics and all within my district, affect our farmers. You know, it would be nice if the Biden administration could get into the real world for a few minutes and not be so out of touch as to what the needs are. We're all for transitioning towards carbon-free energies. Natural gas is the best way to make such a transition. This is serious stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have a serious administration.
If it's 8% or so that we get monthly from Russia and this legislation goes into effect, is the impact symbolic as far as the act is concerned, or are there real impacts for not buying Russian oil?
We should make up for it by drilling domestically, as I've stated, or doing our best to get more imports from Canada, a friendly country. If the Keystone Pipeline was put back into place, that would cover more than the energy that we bring in from Russia. The Keystone Pipeline alone would bring in more oil than we import currently from Russia. Meanwhile, the Biden administration, another upside down and backwards policy, they're in Venezuela talking to a ruthless socialist dictator about who seized our assets, by the way, years back, if they will please sell us some oil. Look, we got to be constructive critics here in Congress and in the House, but this is kind of outrageous. As you could probably tell by my tone, these policy decisions can happen very shortly, and we can correct this situation. 30 seconds of Joe Biden and his administration speaking favorably about domestic energy production and the plan even if it takes 6 months or 7 months, will lower the price of gasoline by 20 cents overnight, because so much of this is based upon futures.
Our guest is with us until 8 o'clock, and if you want to ask him questions, 202-748-8000 for Democrats, Republicans, 202-748-8001, and Independents, 202-748-8002. You can text us thoughts at 202-748-8003. Representative Meuser, to this idea of energy independence, which you talked about, if we're still getting a majority of our oil from Canada and still from other sources, how do you define energy independence in light of that?
Well, again, we were energy independent. Currently, 50% of our imports come from Canada, which works out. It's a very friendly ally to us. However, again, 14 months ago, no, we were gaining all of our energy resources from our own energy resources. And that created a lot of things. It was a national security issue. It kept the price of gasoline very stable. Gasoline has a lot to do with inflation. We see soaring inflation, highest levels again. So it creates that stability. It gives us national security. And when geopolitical events occur, we don't see these spikes that occurred. During President Trump's time, because we were in office, we were energy independent. There were world issues that were taking place. Iran was doing its terrible deeds. There were terrorist acts. There were other things taking place. ISIS was rearing its rotten head. We had a Syrian issue, but you didn't see spikes in gasoline as you would if we were not energy independent.
As far as the omnibus bill and keeping the federal government funded, that's expected to take place, or at least action is expected to take place by Friday. Where are you as far as supporting that?
Well, we got to see the text. We haven't seen the omnibus appropriations bill. I do look forward to being supportive. We need to analyze it. I understand many positive developments have occurred through our Republican appropriators on the committee over the last couple of days that the Senate is being reflective of. So I'm optimistic, but we shall see. As you stated earlier, the deadline is the 11th because the Democrat leadership that controls the Senate, controls the House, and controls the White House has passed 3 CRs, continuing resolutions, over the last year or so. So they can't even come up with a budget. But now we seem as if we are there. And hopefully I can support it. Hopefully there's no poison pills in it that make it impossible, or forget about impossible for me to vote for it, that make it not in the aggregate interests of the vast majority of Americans. That's pretty much my litmus test. Is it in the interests of America's strength economically and national security, and frankly, from a public safety, law and order standpoint?
What poison pills what would be something that would raise a red flag for you?
Well, in the past, when we saw the Rescue Act and we saw the Compete Act and things of that nature, we had amnesty put in there. We had billions and billions of dollars going to the UN for a slush fund. We had additional subsidies for wishful green energy projects. As long as there's nothing glaring, and trust me, it's never perfect, but I'm not in the business of making good the enemy of perfect, right? I mean, if it's close to, if it's overall within the interests of our American economy and our national security, I'm going to be favorable to it.
A viewer from our Twitter feed this morning asked the question, as far as the oil and gas leasing, I believe it was, here in the United States, what guarantees do you have that the oil companies would lower gas prices with the implementation of these new leases?
Well, it's market, it's supply and demand. So if they're opening up and there's more investment taking place in our domestic energy, and that is understood by the institutional investors and others, that there won't be this, frankly, assault on our domestic energy industry, that's a very encouraging prospect, and the futures markets would reduce the price of a barrel of oil. And, that's taking place right now, all right? The level of permits that the Biden administration has issued? My understanding is they haven't issued one permit since being in office, the Biden administration. We, of course, have, he did his executive order prohibiting any development, any new development on federal lands. Okay, but then he cancels the Keystone Pipeline, and we basically have a situation where the administration is, to an extent, threatening and putting all kinds of requirements on our banks to wind back the level of business and investments that they make within the fossil fuel industry. That's pretty outrageous, and frankly, it is taking place. So those inhibitors to our domestic energy need to be rolled back.
Here's Henry in Michigan, Fort Gratiot. Democrats line for our guest, Representative Dan Meuser, Republican of Pennsylvania.
Dan is another Russian, Putin, Trump agent who is spreading misinformation. Jen Psaki just told us that there are 9,000 capped wells that the oil industry refuses to drill in. Why? Because the oil industry is operating at record levels. They have no capacity to hold any more oil. Yesterday, the head of the S&P said that the United States is now a net exporter of oil. Dan, you're such a liar. And for the Russians...
Hey, listen, enough. I'm not going to sit here and be called a liar, sir, in all due respect, okay? And I'm not going to call you a little naive to be listening to Jen Psaki all the time, all right? Those 9,000 wells existed well before the price of oil got to $110 a barrel, all right? They existed when oil was at $45 a barrel.
Hold on.
Do I get my turn to talk?
Okay, hold on. Caller, go ahead. Finish up your comment or question, please.
Okay, now, I have another take on this Putin in Ukraine thing. Look at the timing of this. With the truckers going to D.C., with the insurrectionists planning another insurrection, this time an armed insurrection. Putin and Trump have gotten together and are plotting so to give time to these
Okay, caller, where do you base that assertion on?
You know, words versus actions, right? When President Trump was over in Europe, he schooled the Europeans, the EU, stating, how could you put yourself in such jeopardy and of purchasing oil from Russia in that capacity, putting yourself in such a position of weakness should Putin weaponize his energy resources. And let's face it, a country can't operate without its energy. So along with that, President Trump, on his way to go visit Putin, announced then an executive order to continue the shutdown or to keep the shutdown of Nord Stream 2. Okay, that's not exactly somebody looking for a friend. Before he went and visited with Putin, right as his plane was taking off, he said, we're shutting down Nord Stream 2, which Putin invested billions in and was going to receive billions in return. Okay, that set the stage of what their negotiations are going to be like. That's how you deal from strength. Okay, the United States is 15 times larger GDP than Russia. Okay, so the United States, we need to be dealing from strength. Putin seems to have not the cards, but at least the will to deal from strength. And we've haven't done that with Afghanistan. We've made significant mistakes there, and we made significant mistakes, we meaning the Biden administration, leading up to the surrounding and the invasion which took place of the Ukraine. I mean, this has been going on for months, since August. And it's not Monday morning quarterbacking. Many of us have stated to the Biden administration, to Secretary of Defense Austin, what is being done? Are we fortifying the Ukrainians? Zelensky has been asking for assistance ever since. We didn't. We think we were calling Putin's bluff? Well, clearly he called ours. There was no preparation, no foresight, no war gaming.
Representative, let me roll in another call for you. This is from Nick in Sarasota, Florida, independent line. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Congressman. I'll try to sound a little more sane than that last caller. I think what we need to do is, like you said, open up the energy sector completely. And I'm hoping for a veto-proof majority come November with the GOP. I'd ask for $2 a gallon gas for 87 octane and put that into law along with diesel for the truckers. Then they can sell whatever we export. But do us first. This global market stuff has proven to be detrimental to America's national security. I think we just need to take care of ourselves first. If there's something else to sell after that, fine. But if our economy was booming, then we'd have the revenues from taxes and people working to be able to get the American strength back to where it used to be and just override everything Biden does if it's at all possible.
Okay, that's Nick in Florida.
Well, Biden's policies are inverted to what actually works. If we take on an aggressive approach towards drilling and accessing our energy resources, in Pennsylvania, we have the fourth largest reserve of natural gas in the world. New York State actually has one of the top that can fuel all of the United States for the next 70 years. We've got these reserves. We've got access to oil. We need to develop the pipelines. We need to set a plan on how we're going to utilize our current energy, natural resources in the most pollutant-free manner, carbon-free manner known on Earth, so as it's clear that drilling oil here is far cleaner than drilling in Venezuela or Russia or Saudi Arabia or Iran. We're actually talking to Iran, the center of terrorism, about purchasing oil from Iran. Somebody's going to tell me that's not an inverted, upside-down, backwards policy? Rather than drilling here safely, creating jobs, lowering the price of oil, creating national security, energy independence, and doing it in the most pollutant-free manner possible, we're going to purchase from Iran, a country that funds terrorism throughout the world, okay, that is calling for the annihilation of Israel, and they'd call for the annihilation of the United States if they thought they could actually do it. That's what this Biden administration is working on. So, we need a serious plan that puts country first and has looking out for America's interests for the short term and the long term. And energy is a big part of it.
This is Kenneth from Wilmington, Delaware, Democrats line.
Hi, Senator. Representative, my name is Kenneth. The domestic oil supply could easily be supplied with the 33,000 oil wells that are in the Gulf of Mexico. It's a simple fact that American oil companies have 33,000 wells in the Gulf of Mexico. Also, in relation to a domestic carbon-free energy, we have a nuclear natrium reactor under construction in Wyoming that could use the 700,000 metric tons of nuclear waste in Paducah, Kentucky. All it has to do is be reprocessed. The reactor does not produce fissile material. I don't understand why our government isn't seizing upon these energy resources.
Yeah. Well, first with the wells, back to the wells. Look, we're at over $100 barrel of oil price. Wouldn't it be logical that these companies, if they were sitting on these wells, would now access them and start bringing oil reserves from there? And then if the conspiracy that's being stated is true, then shut it down when prices got low, because what's the price of oil right now? $140, $147. I mean, sky high. I mean, making the days of Jimmy Carter look like the good old days. So let's just look at we're in a supply and demand free market economy. Companies are going to invest where they can get a return, and as long as it's not crazy regulations that add to those costs and to the access, which actually do exist, but to an extent they figure it out. But if there's no pipelines, if there's no if there's not refinery capacity, things of that nature, then they're not going to drill. But back on the nuclear end, Sure, I agree with you. We should have a long-term energy plan, and nuclear should certainly be a part of that. I'd love to see a 10-year energy plan or even 15-year plan. You know, to be honest with you, I was in business for close to 25 years, and boy, we didn't start a day. We certainly didn't start a month or a quarter or a year without a plan, a vision, a plan, and then the team executes. You know, you certainly don't see this out of this White House. And you know, I go back to the Trump administration. We knew what their plan was. We knew what the priorities were and what the plan was to strengthen our economy, strengthen our national security, secure people with their freedoms, and be the United States of America on the world stage.
Representative, you talk a lot about supply and demand. What would you support as reducing demand for oil here in the United States and oil supplies?
Well, that's going to happen over a transitionary time period. You know, yesterday I think it was Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg said, "Hey, everybody go buy an electric car." That's really you know, naive and out of touch. And you know, first of all, most electric cars are pretty expensive. Secondly, 97% of America has gasoline-driven cars, and so it's really the charging stations aren't there. Most electric cars only go about 250 miles on a charge. By the way, those charging stations are powered by coal plants and oil plants and nuclear plants. By the way. So it's a little, you know, they're not appreciating the larger picture here of EVs. I got nothing against EVs. Who would? We've got nothing against cleaner energy. We got to do it in an economically feasible way. We can't do it in a manner that weakens the United States, weakens our allies, and gives strength to clear adversaries, not just adversaries. How about tyrannical, brutal, dictatorship-style leaders, such as Putin, and you know, China, the CCP isn't exactly a bastion of human rights, right? I mean, genocide is taking place there. Putin is murdering at will in the Ukraine, okay? I mean, we got a leader in the Ukraine, Zelensky, you know, was offered a ride by the Biden White House to get out, all right? He said, I want bullets. I don't need a ride. I mean, they're fighting for freedom. Putin is fighting against freedom. And probably that's perhaps the most important thing. That's what Putin fears most,
okay.
People having freedom.
Let's hear from Mark in St. Charles, Missouri, independent line.
Yes, well, thank you for taking my call. First of all, Congressman, I want you to know that I agree with just about everything that you're saying. It's really unbelievable what's going on. And what I'd like you to do is, if you could, is I'd like you to comment on the economy under this Biden administration. The way that I see what's going on, I look at this inflation, and we haven't seen this in over 40 years. Our gas prices are going through the roof, and out in California, I'm seeing prices of $7 and $8 a gallon. Our food prices have just gone up tremendously because of the inflation, and our goods as well. Our open borders, which is unbelievable. We've got millions of people crossing our border. We have terrorists coming into our country, and they don't even count all the ones that get away. And not only that, but all of the fentanyl that is coming in and killing hundreds of thousands of United States citizens, and the Biden administration just allows it to happen. It seems as though, to me, he walks around a little bit incoherent, does not take questions from people, won't answer them, and then as well as the Afghanistan debacle, the withdrawal there. So,
okay, caller, let me stop you there because you're putting a lot out there. But to the point about the economy, if you wanted to respond to that, Representative, and also factor in the jobs report from last week, 678,000 jobs created.
Yeah. Well, first off, you didn't notice anything that the gentleman just brought up in the President's State of the Union. He referenced the border once and jumped right to the Dreamers and the DREAM Act, which, by the way, most would support if we had border security first. So it was really one a state of a union. It was really a state of denial throughout it. But look, related to our economy and what needs to be done, we need to have a vision, set a goal for the United States to be the most competitive place in the world to run a business, to sustain a business, to grow a business, and to start a business. And that comes through taxes, regulations, energy independence, so we have stability there, the right permit processing initiatives. You know, we have a fourth branch of government. It's known as the bureaucracy on the state level and the federal level. Those tens of thousands of employees within those need to get on board with helping, being on the side of job creators and all Americans, and not thinking that their job is to inhibit and give them hassles, frankly. That's a system that can be better corrected on the state level. So we also need through government to assist in the areas where we have lost specific industries to China, frankly. When it comes to the ingredients in pharmaceuticals or pharmaceuticals as a whole, certainly in microchips and semiconductors, there's a bill called the excuse me, CHIPS USA that I'm very favorable to. Sorry, CHIPS USA. It will help us develop more semiconductor businesses within the United States, and some of the large semiconductor companies are getting it, and they're willing to, really out of patriotism, take some of the added costs of doing business in the United States, and they're building here in the U.S. So a lot of these corporations are stepping up in frankly, a patriotic manner. So Intel, for instance, and others.
That last jobs report, then, is that an encouraging trend for you?
Oh, well, first of all, it was terrific. I was very happy to see it. It was 3 times what even the Biden administration thought was going to come out. Now, I will tell you on the same note, a lot of the entitlements and extras and supplements that were created during COVID and during the rescue plan that the Biden administration thought was a wonderful thing to do, spend another $2 trillion of the taxpayers' money. Most of those extra benefits ended at the end of 2021. So January, I think a lot of people, not all, 5%, 6% is enough to change the unemployment and create a higher level of employed and bring people back to our workforce. And that's probably what it was. About 5% of those who could afford not to work came back to work. And I think it's pretty clear what happened there, and that should continue.
Okay, one more quick call from John in Baldwin, Maryland, Democrats line. Go ahead, John.
Hi, Representative. I just wanted to point out a couple misrepresentations that you've made, but there's many. It's unbelievable. But you talked about opening up the Keystone Pipeline and pumping the oil again. The Keystone Pipeline is only 10% complete, and it wasn't pumping any oil. And the tar sands oil that is up in Canada is coming through by rail. So that's a misrepresentation.
Well, it would bring in about 100,000 barrels a day. So I don't know what's a misrepresentation.
Congressman, let him finish his thought, please.
Sure.
You've been talking a lot, Congressman. Let me just say something. And then the other misrepresentation is you're talking about stopping the oil leases. There are 7,000 oil leases currently held by the oil companies that they are not pumping oil. They are making record profits. They're refusing to pump oil on the leases that they have, and that is why they are. That's what's going on there. So you're either misrepresenting.
Okay. Caller, thank you.
Well, I certainly would never, and I promise anyone this, okay, Republican, Democrat, I'd never deliberately misrepresent. There's a chance I could be wrong on occasion. But, sir, if you're pleased with the Biden administration's handling of our energy policy, well, then, good for you. I am not. I don't like that we have $4.17 or whatever it is for a gallon of regular gas. I think it's highly detrimental to American families. I don't like that Russia has us over a barrel, so to speak, and has Europe. I don't like that we could be creating our own energy here, far cleaner, by the way, and create many more jobs. I don't like that the heating oil in someone's home, including natural gas, is up 2, even 3 times. Okay, again, diminishing the disposable income of American families, Pennsylvania families, families in my district. So I'm going to not only voice, I'm going to work for legislation that corrects that.
We've got only about a minute, Congressman, but I wanted to ask you about the Supreme Court's decision yesterday to let the reworked congressional map there in Pennsylvania stand.
Well, it's more than just disappointing. We have a legislative process in Pennsylvania, as per our Constitution, on how the congressional district map should be derived, and it wasn't followed. And it went to the Supreme Court. They've done this once before, the state Supreme Court, that is. They drew up their own map, okay, which is not favorable to Republicans, as you'd imagine, since the governor is a Democrat, as well as the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania tends to be very, very political and happens to be Democrat. So it's what's done is done. Okay, I won't say it was a terrible map in the end, although let me even retract that. Yeah, in many ways it was. It was worse than it was positive. You know, in my district, I retained 70% of my district, but I got to tell you, that's no consolation when we lose a fabulous Republican member of the U.S. House, who's a friend and colleague of mine. So no consolation there whatsoever. It's wrong. The Constitution matters. Not only does it matter, it should be followed in a very strict way, both state constitutions and U.S. constitutions. And if it is to be changed, it needs to be done by a referendum by the people. So, when you see something like that happen, it diminishes trust in our government system, because the rule book, i.e. the Constitution, is what we must be able to rely upon for the rules of government and for our individual freedoms.
Representative Dan Meuser, Republican of Pennsylvania, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.